What if the woman cleaning your office used to sleep on the street and one day saved your billion-dollar company? What if the assistant you ignored was the reason your CEO started smiling again? This isn't just a story about love. It's about resilience, redemption, and a girl who walked into the wrong interview but changed everything. If this story touched something deep in you, don't scroll away. Hit subscribe to follow more unbelievable true-style stories like this. Drop a comment. Tell us, would you have trusted Sophie? And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder. It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is where you're going. It was pouring in Manhattan. Not just a drizzle, we're talking full-blown sideways soak-your-socks kind of rain. And in the middle of it, Sophie Lane sprinted across Fifth Avenue with nothing but a broken umbrella and a borrowed coat that didn't zip past her ribs. Her sneakers squished with every step. Her hair was wet, stuck to her cheeks, but her eyes focused, determined. Sophie was 24, homeless, and hell-bent on not staying that way. She had spent the night tucked into a bench at Grand Central Station, curled up with her backpack and a dream she refused to give up on. At 6:12 a.m., she washed up in a gas station restroom, using a half-empty bottle of water and a bar of soap she borrowed from a motel 2 weeks ago. She rethreaded the hole in her jacket sleeve with dental floss, applied chapstick instead of blush, and when she found an old newspaper in the trash that read, "Kitchen help, wanted apply in person," she folded it neatly, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "Let this be the one." It led her to a building that scraped the clouds, glass panels gleaming like diamonds in the rain. Towering, intimidating, beautiful. She didn't think twice. She stepped into the lobby, soaked from head to toe, trailing puddles behind her. The security guard's eyes widened. "Miss, whatever you're selling, this isn't the place." Sophie took a breath. Her voice cracked, but she held her ground. "I'm not selling anything. I'm here for a job." He raised an eyebrow. "This is Fletcher & Carter HQ. You've got the wrong address. No kitchen help here. Maybe check the service entrance." She clenched her jaw. That name, Fletcher & Carter, was the kind you heard on news tickers and Forbes articles. She looked around. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, people in $2,000 suits. She turned to leave, humiliated. That's when the elevator doors slid open. Out stepped Ethan Carter. Black suit, no tie, leather briefcase. Controlled elegance in motion. The kind of man who made silence feel louder than applause. Sophie didn't know who he was, not yet. But the moment their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. One heartbeat, one glance, then gone. Ethan didn't pause, didn't blink. He walked past as if nothing had happened, but he saw her. The security guard straightened. "Mr. Carter, good morning." Ethan nodded, not looking back. Sophie's hands trembled. Her hoodie clung to her shoulders like a second skin. Her socks were wet. Her hope was slipping. She whispered under her breath, "I came to find work, not pity." And she turned not toward the door, but toward the front desk. There, behind a glossy marble counter, a woman in a headset stared at her like she'd wandered in from a different planet. Sophie stepped forward anyway. "Hi," she said. "I think there's been a mix-up. But is there any chance someone here is hiring, even janitorial, filing anything?" The receptionist blinked. She was about to respond when a man in a blazer interrupted. "We're short one assistant candidate," he said, flipping through a clipboard. "Miss Lane." Sophie froze. Lane, that was her last name? Coincidence or fate? "Yes," she said almost too fast. "That's me. Come on, you're next." Before she could process what was happening, Sophie was being led into an elevator, rising 40 floors above reality. Upstairs, behind a glass wall with skyline views, Ethan Carter sat reviewing documents. When the door opened and Sophie Lane, dripping exhausted defiant, stepped inside, he looked up. His brow lifted barely. Her presence was an accident, her appearance far from corporate, yet she stood there not apologizing, not shrinking. For a second, neither spoke. Then Ethan said, "You're not here for the assistant position, are you?" "No," Sophie replied, "but I'm here because I need a chance. And I figured if I could walk into the wrong building and still get this far, maybe that means something." Ethan didn't answer right away. He just stared. The city behind him sparkled. The air between them tightened. Finally he said, "Have a seat." And just like that, the interview began. She was never supposed to be there. But maybe she was exactly what that office needed, and definitely what he didn't see coming. The air in the room was thick. Sophie sat across from Ethan Carter, still damp from the rain, her backpack pressed against her legs like a shield. The room was too clean, too quiet. The only sound was the low hum of the city echoing through the 40-story-high glass windows. Ethan leaned back in his chair, slowly setting his pen down. His eyes scanned her, not with disdain, but with the cold calculation of a man who wasn't used to surprises. She didn't flinch. She met his gaze like she had nothing to lose, because she didn't. He finally spoke. "Do you think you're qualified to be my assistant?" Sophie blinked once, then answered without hesitation, "No." The silence after that hit like a slap. But she added, her voice steady, "I know how to listen, how to move fast, and how to do the jobs people usually walk away from. I've cleaned gas station bathrooms at 2 a.m. I've stitched my own jacket with fishing line, and I've sold granola bars on the subway to pay for a pair of socks. So if you're looking for someone polished, I'm not her. But if you want someone who won't give up even when everything's stacked against her, that's me." Ethan didn't reply immediately. He just watched her, like he was searching for something behind her words, then a twitch, barely there. The corner of his mouth pulled ever so slightly. A smile, the first real one in weeks. He leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Honest answer," he said. "Bold too. Almost like you're making up for the mud." Sophie gave the faintest smirk. "No, this is me. The mud just adds contrast." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. That alone should have gotten a standing ovation. But Sophie didn't know that. She was too busy trying not to let her knees shake under the table. This wasn't part of any plan. There was no resume, no elevator pitch. Just survival mode, the only one she'd ever known. Ethan opened a folder on his desk, then paused. "Your resume." She hesitated, then slowly pulled a wrinkled, water-stained sheet from her backpack and placed it on the table like a fragile offering. The paper tore slightly at the corner. "Coffee stains." One word misspelled. She stared at it, then said quietly, "I guess it matches the look." He looked at the paper, then at her. Then he laughed, not mockingly. A real quick burst of amusement, like someone had opened a window in a closed room. "This interview is definitely different," he said. "I tend to make lasting impressions," Sophie replied. He studied her again. She could see it in his eyes, the mental debate. Protocol said, "End it here." His gut clearly wasn't so sure. Finally, he nodded once and said, "Thank you, Miss Lane. We'll be in touch." That was it. She stood up, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and added as she left, "If you plan on splashing someone again, maybe try a different day." "I've already had mine." The door clicked shut behind her. Downstairs, Sophie stepped out of the elevator chest, tight heart pounding. Everyone in the lobby stared as she walked past, soaking wet, out of place, but unshaken. She didn't stop, didn't look back. In her mind, she was already rehearsing how to tell herself it was just a mistake, a weird accident, move on. But upstairs, Ethan Carter hadn't moved on at all. He sat in silence, a stack of pristine laminated resumes beside him untouched. In the middle of the stack, he carefully placed one crumpled, soggy copy. Sophie Lane. He stared at the name, the torn edge, the water stain shaped vaguely like a heart. He didn't know what he was doing, but he knew one thing: he'd remember her, not because of her answers, but because she didn't apologize for being real in a world obsessed with pretending. She didn't belong in that room, yet somehow she'd filled it. 3 days passed. No calls, no emails, just rain, cold nights, and the sound of subway brakes screeching into darkness. Sophie Lane had convinced herself it was over, that whatever strange moment she shared with Ethan Carter was just that, a moment. She didn't belong in his world, and maybe for a second he forgot that. Until her phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m. on a Thursday. Unknown number. "Miss Lane, this is Fletcher and Carter. Mr. Carter would like to offer you a 2-week trial as executive assistant. Temporary, of course." She didn't speak for a beat. Then, "When do I start?" That Monday, Sophie arrived before sunrise. She had no apartment, no warm bed to wake up from. She'd been sleeping in the back of an abandoned print shop across from a Dunkin' Donuts, a place she used to walk past as a kid and wonder what success smelled like. Her backpack was now her closet. Her bathroom, the third-floor restroom of Fletcher & Carter, cleaned nightly by a woman who never questioned why Sophie always seemed to arrive early. She washed up fast, tied her hair back, and swapped her wrinkled hoodie for a slightly less wrinkled button-down she'd ironed with the flat side of a coffee pot. By 8:00 a.m., she was behind a desk just outside the CEO's office, her name taped to the front, like a joke someone forgot to finish. Inside, Ethan Carter didn't say much. "Don't spill coffee," he said, without looking up. "I'll do my best," she replied. And just like that, the test began. The first week was a whirlwind. She took messages, scheduled meetings, printed reports she didn't understand, but pretended she did. She spilled tea once, not on anyone, but close enough to make her panic for 10 full minutes. She sent the wrong document to a partner in Tokyo, but corrected it before Ethan found out. No one knew where she came from, but everyone felt her presence. She was quick, quiet, smart in a way that wasn't taught, it was earned. Still, she was exhausted. She hadn't slept properly in days, hadn't had a hot meal since that last slice of gas station pizza. But she smiled, she nodded, she kept going. And then, she crashed. It was Friday night. 11:42 p.m. Everyone had gone home. Sophie stayed late to organize files for Monday's board meeting. She sat on the floor of the supply closet, cross-legged papers spread like a battlefield around her. Her eyelids got heavy. The hum of the copier next door became a lullaby. She leaned back against a stack of paper boxes and fell asleep. Ethan came in the next morning earlier than usual. Some instinct he couldn't explain told him to check the east wing. When he turned the corner, he stopped. There, curled up beside a tower of toner cartridges, Sophie slept like a child. Her jacket balled up under her head, her shoes still on, her hands clutching a file folder like it was her last possession. He stood there, quiet, watching. This girl who didn't belong here, who didn't fit, had just worked herself to sleep in a closet. He didn't wake her. He didn't call security. He took off his navy wool coat, the one tailored in Milan, the one no one dared touch, and laid it gently over her shoulders, then walked away. When Sophie woke up, the coat slipped to her lap. She blinked, looked around. The office was still empty. She pulled the label inside the collar and whispered to herself, "Are you kidding me, Ethan Carter?" She held the coat like it was made of fire, but for the first time in days, she smiled. Downstairs, Diego, the IT guy, with a beard like a forest and the heart of a puppy, cornered her near the break room. "I saw you," he whispered. Sophie froze. In the closet, sleeping. Her eyes widened. "I'm not going to tell," he said quickly. "But maybe you could use some help." She nodded, a little too fast. Diego handed her a breakfast sandwich still warm. "Thanks," she said, her voice cracking a little. "Don't thank me," he shrugged. "Thank the vending machine on 4. Technically, it's illegal to pry it open. But technically, I'm it." They laughed, really laughed for the first time. But upstairs, things weren't quite as light. Ethan sat at his desk staring at Sophie's name on the temp roster. A post-it note next to it read, "Trial ends in 9 days." He tapped his pen. He remembered the way she looked asleep. Vulnerable, spent. She didn't ask for help, but he wanted to give it, not out of pity, out of respect, and maybe something more. By the end of week 2, Sophie Lane was no longer just that girl who showed up soaked. She was the new name that made half the office whisper and the other half sit straighter. It started with a spreadsheet. A seemingly normal Tuesday, Sophie was reviewing the final draft of a quarterly financial report. Not part of her job, but she couldn't help noticing something off. The numbers in the sales forecast didn't add up. She triple-checked, ran the formulas again. Her fingers were shaking by the 4th cell. Then she did something no temp assistant had ever dared to do. She walked straight into Ethan Carter's office holding a red pen. "Mr. Carter," she said, not waiting to be invited, "in this number is wrong. If you present it tomorrow, you're walking into a firestorm." He raised an eyebrow. "Explain." She didn't hesitate. She broke it down with sharp focus, the mismatched projections, the miscalculated margins, and how the senior accountant had copied last quarter's estimates without updating the variables. By the time she finished, Ethan's expression had shifted from passive interest to quiet alarm. He canceled the meeting, reworked the report, personally sent her a one-word email later that night. Impressive. That one moment, it changed everything. But in a corporate jungle, the moment someone shines, someone else will try to shut off the spotlight. And that someone was Melissa Grant, Ethan's former assistant, elegant, calculating, and dressed like she walked out of a fashion ad. Melissa had been the gatekeeper until Sophie showed up with a $10 shirt and a brain no one expected. She watched Ethan lean a little closer when Sophie talked. Not romantically, not yet, but curiously, respectfully, differently. And Melissa hated it. The gossip started subtly. First, a comment near the water cooler. "Did you hear the temp girl used to live on the streets?" Then, a louder whisper in the copy room. Word is, she bathes in the office bathroom every morning. And finally, why is Carter so interested in someone with no degree and no address? Sophie heard it all. She pretended she didn't. But every whisper was a paper cut. Every look a silent judgment. She still showed up early. Still stayed late. Still triple-checked every number, every name, every calendar entry. But now, with a wall between her and everyone else. Except Ethan. Late one evening, she brought a corrected vendor list to his office. He looked up and said casually, "They're talking about you." She froze. "You know," she asked. "I know everything in this building," he said, eyes steady. "But I don't care where you slept last year. I care what you fixed today." She exhaled slowly, then said softly, "Sometimes. I still wake up thinking I'm back on that bench in the station. Like this is a dream someone's gonna yank away." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Then make it harder for them to take it." And just like that, the bond between them, built on nothing and everything, grew stronger. But Melissa wasn't finished. She dug through Sophie's records, personal info, even surveillance footage. She found a clip, Sophie sleeping in the office storage room curled up under that navy coat. She downloaded it, labeled it unauthorized behavior, employee conduct, sent it anonymously to HR, and CC'd every board member. The subject line: "Who is Sophie Lane, really?" It started with an email. The subject line looked normal, the tone polished, authoritative. It read, "Distribute to all external legal partners, urgent." The sender, Ethan Carter. Or so Sophie thought. She had checked the signature twice, the formatting 3 times. She hesitated only for a second before attaching the confidential internal audit and clicking send. The damage was done in less than 5 seconds. By the time the real Ethan walked into the building that morning, his inbox had already exploded. The leaked financials were in the hands of 3 external firms, 2 of which weren't even under current contract. Sophie was pale quiet, staring at her screen in disbelief. She knew what she'd done, but she didn't know the trap she'd walked into. Melissa had been waiting for the right moment, the right mistake. And this one, it was gold-plated. The email Sophie responded to had come from a spoofed internal domain Melissa created the night before a near-perfect replica of Ethan's. She'd timed it just right, dropped it when she knew Ethan would be in transit, crafted every word to mimic his voice, then watched it all unfold from her desk with a quiet, satisfied smile. Now Sophie stood before the executive board, summoned like a criminal, a printed copy of the leaked document clipped in front of every suit in the room. Ethan was not present. She stood alone. "Miss Lane, the head of HR," began, voice cold and sharp. "Do you have any explanation for why you released confidential material without proper authorization?" Sophie didn't speak right away. No panic, no excuses. She simply inhaled, straightened her shoulders, and said, "I made a mistake. But I followed the email instruction because I believed it came from Mr. Carter." A pause. Then another voice, this time a senior partner. "Do you realize how catastrophic this could have been?" Sophie nodded. "I do. Are you even qualified to be in this building?" Another board member snapped. She didn't flinch. "I'm not. I never claimed to be. I didn't go to Yale. I don't have a fancy resume. I've slept in train stations. I've eaten meals from gas station leftovers. But I've shown up every single day. I work harder than anyone in this room gives me credit for. And if I'm being fired today, I'll walk out the same way I walked in, with nothing but my name and the truth." The room went quiet. She added softly but firmly, "But don't ever think I betrayed this company. I made a mistake. I didn't break trust." Silence. Then the door opened. Ethan Carter walked in. Every eye turned. He didn't look at anyone but Sophie. He walked to the front, placed both hands on the conference table, and said, "She's telling the truth." A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan turned to the board. The error wasn't hers. It was mine. He let it hang. "Because I hired her. I trusted her. And if she followed an instruction that looked like it came from me, that's on me, not her. And if someone spoofed my email, maybe you should be asking how secure our systems are, instead of blaming the only person here who's still learning where the coffee machine is." Another pause. Then Ethan added, this time softer, "I stand by her. Fully." The tension snapped like a string pulled too tight. Melissa, watching from the glass hallway, turned pale. She hadn't expected that. Back inside the board, voted not to terminate Sophie. She was cleared. But something inside her had shifted. Later in the elevator, she turned to Ethan and asked, "Why did you do that?" He looked at her, the steel in his expression melting just enough. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated, and I'd rather stand beside someone who owns her mistakes than someone who hides behind perfect credentials." The elevator dinged. The doors opened. She didn't step out. Instead, she looked up and said, "Thank you," and walked back to her desk, taller than she'd ever stood before. After the boardroom blow-up, something shifted. Not just in the office, but between Sophie Lane and Ethan Carter. He didn't say it. She didn't ask. But it was there, in the way he paused by her desk longer than necessary, in the post-it notes with reminders. "Drink water. You skipped lunch again, left an extra coffee. It's on your shelf." At first, Sophie told herself it was professionalism, politeness, maybe guilt. But deep down, she knew better. No one cared about her like that. Not when she had nothing, not when she came from nowhere. Ethan, too, found himself watching her when he shouldn't. At the printer, on her lunch break, fixing a jammed copier while humming under her breath. There was something in her he hadn't seen in years. Resilience without bitterness. She didn't play the game. She survived it. And that was magnetic. But Sophie wasn't naive. She noticed the glances, the extra accidental meetings, the way his voice softened when it was just them. And it scared her. Because people like Ethan didn't fall for girls like her. One rainy Tuesday, she stayed late. The office was quiet, just the hum of the vents and a flickering fluorescent light above the filing cabinets. She was trying to catch up on invoices when her vision blurred. Her body shook. Her throat burned. Her hands felt cold, even under layers. She was sick, and too stubborn to admit it. She stumbled into the back supply room, the one she used to sleep in, and curled up beside the heater, hugging her knees. She tried to rest, just a few minutes, but everything spun. That same night, Ethan was still in the building. He'd forgotten his phone charger, circled back to his office, and noticed Sophie's bag under her desk. Strange. She never left it. Then he noticed the light still on in the east corridor. His steps quickened. He found her slumped beside the heater, cheeks flushed, forehead damp with sweat. "Sophie." No answer. He knelt down, pressed a hand to her forehead, burning. "Sophie," he said again, firmer this time. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, dazed. "I'm fine," she mumbled. "Just tired." "You have a fever," he snapped. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "Didn't want to look weak." "You look human," he whispered. Then, without thinking, without calculating, he wrapped his arms around her. She tensed, then melted. Not because she wanted comfort, but because for the first time in years someone cared. Not out of obligation, but because they chose to. They stayed like that. No words, just the hum of the heater, the glow of a single bulb overhead. His hand gently resting on her back, her head against his chest. Their breaths finding rhythm. In that silence, something unspoken passed between them. No promises, no fairy tales. Just two souls, damaged, tired, raw, finally seen. Later, as he walked her to the elevator, she whispered, "Thank you for not leaving." He replied, just as quietly, "I wasn't planning to." The elevator doors opened. She stepped in. But before they closed, she looked up, eyes locked. That moment, more intimate than any kiss. For a moment, it felt like everything was finally turning around. Sophie Lane was showing up early, nailing deadlines, gaining quiet respect around the office. And while she didn't dare name it, what was growing between her and Ethan felt real, careful, unspoken, but real. Then, the past came knocking, with no warning, no mercy. It started with a headline, splashed across a third-rate gossip blog, then reposted by a clickbait Twitter account, CEO's assistant. Once arrested, sleeping in public park. Ethan Carter's mystery girl exposed. Attached was a grainy mugshot. Sophie, 19, gaunt face, tired eyes, wrapped in a blanket on a park bench. It wasn't a crime, not really, just a charge for trespassing after hours. She'd been trying to survive a winter night in Manhattan with nowhere else to go. But the internet didn't care about context. Within hours, the story went viral. Hashtag homeless hustler, hashtag Carter scandal, #who is Sophie Lane memes, hate, judgment. People called her a fraud, a manipulator. She played the victim to win over the CEO. Classic gold digger move. Watch, she'll be CFO by next year. By lunchtime, financial blogs were speculating if Ethan was emotionally compromised. By 2 p.m., Fletcher & Carter's stock price had dipped 3.7%. By 4 p.m., the board had called an emergency meeting. Sophie didn't cry. She sat at her desk, stone still as phones rang, and people stared. Her inbox flooded with questions she had no answers for. She didn't open a single one. When Ethan finally walked into her office, his jaw was tight. "Sophie, the board wants you gone." She didn't flinch. "Of course they do," she said. "I'd fire me too." Ethan stepped closer. "They don't care about the truth. They care about damage control. Optics. And you?" she asked quietly. That stopped him. He looked at her, not like a CEO, not like a savior, just a man who realized this woman had lived 10 lives before she even walked into his lobby. She rose from her chair, hands steady. "I've been fired before, kicked out of shelters, ignored like I didn't exist. So if this is it, just say it, Ethan. I'll walk out now." He shook his head. "I'm not letting you take the fall for surviving." But she cut him off. "I'm not ashamed of where I came from. Only that it hurts you, that it makes people question you." They stood in silence. Until Sophie said, "Then let me walk away, before you have to." Part 8. A homeless girl walked into the wrong interview, but she walked out with a CEO's heart. Part 8. Sophie Lane didn't leave in tears. She didn't storm out, didn't throw a final word across the office. She packed her things in silence, a few pens, her worn notebook, the cardigan Diego lent her last month, and the post-it from Ethan still stuck to her monitor. "Remember to eat." The moment felt unreal, like watching herself from outside her own body. After everything, this was how it ended. But deep down, she knew it wasn't the end. It was a choice. Her choice. The board hadn't formally fired her. Ethan fought hard, furious at their demands, refusing to sign off. But the rumors had spread too far. The press was relentless, stakeholders nervous, and someone even leaked internal texts, phrases twisted to make Sophie look like she manipulated her way in. Ethan offered to resign if it meant protecting her. That's when she knew she had to go. She couldn't let him burn for her past. He had given her a shot when no one else even saw her. And she wouldn't let her shadow become his burden. So that night, she left him a letter, a simple envelope, no signature on the front, just to Ethan. He found it the next morning lying on his desk under his favorite fountain pen. Inside her handwriting, small, neat, a little shaky, but clear. "Ethan, you saw me when I was invisible. When I walked into that building, I didn't even believe in myself. But you did. You gave me purpose, dignity, a reason to sit up straight again. But I can't keep standing behind you like a shadow. Not when I need to learn how to stand on my own. You've spent your whole life building something people said you didn't deserve. Now it's my turn. Thank you for seeing me. But it's time I learned to see myself. Sophie Ethan read the letter twice, then again. The third time, the words blurred. She was gone. Just like that. No forwarding address, no phone calls, no goodbyes. He checked with HR. She'd filed a formal resignation. Clean. Professional. Final. All she left behind was that letter, and the scent of her coffee, still faint on her desk. Across town, Sophie sat alone on a park bench, the same kind she once slept on. But this time she wasn't hiding. She was planning. She had just $146 in her pocket, one suitcase and no job. But she had something no headline could erase clarity. She knew who she was, and she finally believed it was enough. She opened her laptop, borrowed from Diego, who insisted she take it, and began to type. Not a resume, not a plea, a business plan. She wouldn't just chase jobs anymore. She'd build something of her own, something she could be proud of. Back at Fletcher and Carter, Ethan stood at the tall windows, her letter still in hand. He read it again, and whispered to the city below, "Come back when you're ready. I'll be here." Part 9. A homeless girl walked into the wrong interview, but she walked out with a CEO's heart. 1 month had passed. The headlines were gone. The hashtags had faded. Fletcher and Carter stock had bounced back. The world had moved on. But Ethan hadn't. Not a single day had gone by without him wondering where she was, what she was doing, if she was okay. Her desk remained untouched. He didn't have the heart to replace her. Every time he walked past it, whispered her name. Until one Thursday afternoon, Diego knocked on his office door. "She didn't ask me to tell you," he said, "but I thought you should know." He handed Ethan a flyer. Community baking workshop for women rebuilding their lives. Location, 14th and Main, Thursdays, 4 p.m. Ethan didn't ask questions. He was out the door before Diego finished his sentence. The sun was setting when he found her. Through the glass window of a modest community center kitchen, he saw her flower on her cheek, apron crooked sleeves, rolled up laughing. She looked free, not perfect, not polished, but undeniably her. She was helping an elderly woman pipe frosting onto a cupcake, coaching gently, cheering quietly. For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled. He didn't walk in. He just waited. Leaning against the brick wall outside, hands in his pockets, watching the life she was building from the ground up without him. And that's exactly why he knew. He didn't want her back as an assistant. He wanted her back as herself. When class ended, Sophie stepped outside into the soft swirl of first snow. She pulled her coat tighter, humming to herself. Then she froze. He was there, right in front of her. No suit, no driver, just Ethan, holding nothing but his breath. Her eyes widened. "How did you, Diego?" he said, almost sheepishly. She gave a small smile. "You came all the way down here." He nodded, then added quietly, "This time, I'm not offering you a job." She tilted her head, guarded, curious. "I'm offering you something else," he said. "A place, with me. Not behind me. Not beneath me. Beside me." She blinked, caught off guard by the rawness in his voice. "I don't need an assistant," he continued. "I need someone who reminds me what matters, someone who calls me out, challenges me, makes me better." He took one step closer. "I need you. The only person who's ever taught me how to live outside the boardroom." Sophie looked at him, heart pounding, then grinned. "As long as I'm not in charge of cleaning out your fridge again." Ethan laughed, relieved. She stepped into his arms without hesitation. They stood there in the quiet hush of falling snow. No fanfare, no flashing lights. Just two people who'd walked through fire and found each other on the other side. No titles, no walls, just warmth, just home. Sometimes the person you overlook is the one who could save everything. Sophie's story reminds us of a powerful truth: your past doesn't define your worth. She walked into a boardroom covered in mud, with no degree, no fancy title, and no place to call home. And yet, she became the reason a CEO found his humanity again. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real. In a world obsessed with status image and polished resumes, we forget that character, resilience, and courage matter more. Sophie didn't need a second chance. She needed just one chance. And when she got it, she showed up every single day. This story is a reminder. Whether you're in a suit or sleeping bag, your value isn't measured by your bank account or your zip code. It's measured by your heart, how you treat others when no one's watching. So next time you meet someone who seems like they don't belong, ask yourself, or do they just not fit into a world that stopped caring too soon? What did this story make you feel? Drop a comment below. We read every one. Subscribe for more powerful human stories that stay with you long after the credits roll.